and we'll get into it in a little bit, because one of the things I want to talk to you about is water, right? And I always talk about hydrogen being the absolute smallest particle. It's the most powerful antioxidant. When it comes to ozone, ozone does one thing and one thing only. It looks to neutralize and oxidize either a bacteria or a virus or an odor. So I call it like a free scavenger. It's just running around. And once it finds that thing that it needs to destroy, it turns back into oxygen. It just goes back to O2. So when you start talking about combining ozone with photocatalytic oxidation, it's creating something that's called H2O2, which is hydrogen peroxide in a vapor form with ozone. So if you were to like look on like a crazy scientist diagram, it would actually be H2O2O3. So you're using ozone and hydroxyls that are going through. Kind of like the easiest example is if you've ever cut yourself and you used hydrogen peroxide. When it starts to bubble, imagine on a nano scale, the ozone is going through and doing a process that's known as lysis. Lysis is the disintegration of a cell wall, specifically when it comes to viruses. I would imagine it's very similar to the mold as well, but ozone is going out and it's a scavenger, and it's looking for the porous areas in that basement where you've had those odors, or a mold from a leaky pipe, or a condensation barrier where one night it was hot and then like our place that we have up in Michigan, and you can go from a 30-degree morning to an 80-degree afternoon. When you've got those drastic swings, things like a crawl space can easily be infected with mold. Ozone is the most safest and natural way to disinfect those ozones, short of doing like a chlorine dioxide gas treatment, which then you have to leave the house. So that's why I tell everybody, if you're trying to clean the air inside of your home and not spend $300 to $500 a year on filters, there is nothing better than the Triad air for what it does for removing pathogens, bacteria, viruses, heavy metals, dust, and pollen. It is by far the best investment you will ever make to protect your family.
Gosh, it makes you think of something, because I'm big into preparedness, as people and we watch the show know, or for those of you that are new to the show, it's our conversation so far probably tells you that, okay, this guy's a little bit of a prepper, which we absolutely are. But so right now we live more in a climate, kind of like, we have 4 seasons, right? So we've got good winters and good summers. For folks that are moving out of Florida and they're preparing, and say they're stopping up on food and water and ammunition or whatever it is, the one thing that I think a lot of people aren't looking at is the fact that if there's a grid down scenario, if you are in any kind of area that is high humidity, high temperature, your number one threat is mold. And that this is something that a lot of people don't think about, is that, we weren't, if you look at how people live, say, and you go to Bali, for instance, it's all very open air structures. Like they don't have
Yes.
these houses like we have with, say, stucco and like clay tile roofs and all these closed systems. And a lot of people don't understand that we've got drywall, we've got carpet, all kinds of things that if you live in Florida and you're not actively keeping your house cool or reducing the humidity, say there's a grid down for a month or so, you're gonna have people that are getting sick and dying of mold poisoning. And so what this is like, kind of like as I'm like just talking, it's kind of clicking to me. It's like, oh. So can you show the little kind of mini purifier thing that you had again, the little box you held up?
Yes. So the little plug-in mini, this is great for 175 to 300 square feet. I tell most people 250 square feet, easy, plug and play, no filters. It is a game changer.
Well, that's what I'm thinking of. So whether it's that for, say, a smaller room or the bigger filter, they're not like major power hogs. So a small solar generator running one of those things is what is.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but to me, it makes sense that right there would be, I'd imagine, would play a significant role in keeping you healthy and safe if you don't have power for a long time. Because a lot of people, they think, oh, we can get by without electricity and we've got our food and whatever. But I'd imagine after a couple of weeks, they start coughing, and then all of a sudden, your wife is sick and your kid's sick. And before you know it, you've got mold poisoning, because whether it's in the attic or, in the garage or some part of the house, even in your bedroom, that living in Florida, as is a good example, it's extremely wet and hot, which is just like you're a petri dish. So it's interesting because I've often thought about this. It's like, oh gosh, how would I prep if I lived in Florida? And I thought, okay, I might make sure that I can still run my air conditioner to, because air conditioning units, they pull the, water out of the air, so they help keep your humidity down. But as I'm looking at this, it's like, this is it. Like, this is the bulletproof, prepping solution for grid down in a Florida type climate. Make sure you've got a basic solar generator that can run one of these machines, and get one of these machines. And that's how you're going to keep your family from dying from mold poisoning.
Well, not only that, but when you talk about the humidity, right? I wish there was something I could do for the people in Arizona, Nevada, Iowa, and even parts of southern Utah. Now, when you get near Lake Utah, when you're in Salt Lake City, and you get near Salt Lake, you're definitely going to be okay in that humidity range. But one of the things that I was showing you at the Reawaken tour, and I'm only going to move off screen here for just about 10 seconds so I can actually show you what we've been doing at Air Water Healing, why we've been getting more traction to our website in the past 3 months. A lot of because of what happened in Helene and some of the great first responders who have been working with us and partnering with us. When I tell people that I have not drank in city water or bottled water for the last 3 months, when I'm at home in Florida, I'm going to show you the coolest thing in the entire world. And Dr. Brian Artis was one of the main inspirations for kind of thinking about what's in our water, right? We're not just talking about pharmaceuticals. We're not just talking about, birth control, that
Pesticides.
pesticides, heavy metals, rust, aluminum, all the different types of places. Like, I joke around and I say that our water hangs out in some pretty seedy joints. It really, really does. And if you don't have a very expensive filter, it is very hard to get rid of things like fluoride. So what we did at airwaterhealing.com, we figured most people that already have the Triad air running in their house, they've got pristine air inside of the home already. But to be able to take an air purification technology and put it into the kitchen, when I show you this, I just want to see your face, Seth, if you don't remember me briefly talking about it to you at the Reawaken tour. I'm going to slide this over for just a second. I'm going to show you guys.
Sure. Good. Good.
So this right here that is right in front of me, this is a tabletop atmospheric water generator. What that means is the humidity that's in your air, we're taking dirty air right through here on the side. I've got an activated carbon charcoal filter, and all I do is press that little button right there, and this will generate about 2 to 2.5 gallons of drinking water a day, and it comes out chilled at 61 degrees.
So, and I remember seeing this. You demonstrated this at the Reawaken. I was blown away by it. So basically, that device, like, which actually this is kind of crazy. Again, I always go back to prepping because I'm writing a book on prepping, so it's like right in my mind. I'm thinking, okay, water, right?
I want to co-author the book with you because I've got so much stuff. It's so much stuff.
Well, it's just
I had to
crazy.
be on our website. I tell every prepper.
Well, because what you got there is, as I understand, it's a machine that, let's just say that you live in an area, you don't have access to a river, you don't have access to a lake, you don't have a well. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
If you're on city water and there's a grid down scenario, you're screwed. Like you
Yep.
and like there and let now you could always collect rainwater, but rainwater is full of aluminum, and all kinds of other chemicals, right?
Right.
Unfortunately, it's just the reality of it. So that machine literally just it pulls water out of the air. So if you live in an
Yep.
environment, like what's the humidity that's needed, what, 40-50% minimum humidity inside, or
We recommend between 30 to 90% humidity.
okay.
If you get below 30%, you're only going to generate maybe a liter and a half a day. I tell everybody, I think this thing does 30 gallons a day when you're in Florida, but I mean, our specs that we test it's about 2 to 2.5 gallons of water a day. But the one thing is if you're like me, I know that if I'm going to be in a low humidity area for multiple months, you can literally take the water that is from your source. We have a actual tank in the back that you can fill with water, and then it will filter it. So we have 3 filters inside there. It'll actually filter your city water as well. So you're not just using it as an atmospheric water generator. If you're in a low humidity area, you can use it as a water filter. Way better than a Brita or a Berkey. But again, it does require electricity, but it uses only 200 watts at peak. So about maybe 125 to 150 regularly. And then when it's at peak, so you could run this off of an inverter or get a solar panel. I've got plenty of guys that go out, campers, RVers, and this is an absolute necessity to them. They put it in their RV, and while they're out hiking all day, this thing's cranking and making water.
So explain to me if our air is so bad, which we know that it is, and let's just say that you are running that thing in a camper or when you're traveling, you're obviously not running, whole house filter, or you might just be sitting outside, right? So if that's pull, let's just imagine that it's sitting outside. Like say you're in a tent and you're using that thing. If it's pulling in air that's filthy, right? That's full of all kinds of heavy metals, et cetera.